Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about testing, so let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is it true that the majority of software engineers don't like testing? I would say yes, but I won't say that it is that they don't like testing, it is that they are too lazy and don't care usually about it enough to do it consistently, because the thing that is most important to them is not testing. So it's not like I want to say that they don't like testing. Perhaps that's not the usual thing I hear, or like not the thing I see. It's that they prioritize shipping and delivery above testing, because testing is in a sense, on average, a little bit like it's a bit like an insurance or a security policy or something like that, and that is that when people don't feel, and people, you argue that this is the way most humans work, unless there is a fire in the house, they will not care if there is a fire hazard, because they don't feel the threat. It's this is like humans are very, very responsive to things that are an immediate thing. Like immediate problems is this thing that we are hardwired to dealing with, and anything that is like future things to do, or things that we don't have to do right now or don't feel like doing right now, are things we generally just try to ignore as much as possible. We try to fork it off into the future because it doesn't feel important at this time. And that is basically unit testing. And the reason why I argue this is because to this day, on average, most software companies have a problem with their test coverage or their test quality and things like that. It's not always. Sometimes you have code bases. I've actually only met maybe one or two teams that, like from the bat, like off the bat, had around 80. I think the sweet spot is between 80 or 85% test coverage of their code. Now, test coverage isn't necessarily the best metric to say that, yeah, this is a good team who's doing a lot of testing, but it is an indicator as good as any we have for that they're actually care about it. But the norm is usually that teams have everything from 1% up to maybe 50% tops, something like that. And the only excuse people have for this, if there is anything that to be said about it, is that there are no circumstances. They are simply not writing the test, and it is just as children who don't clean their room or don't brush their teeth. There is no excuse for not doing it. It is that they are too lazy or too uninterested, or they're doing other stuff to actually do it. And I argue that is, to me, that is that software developers don't really like testing, because the reality is that a lot of the features that you write, the process is actually very easy. Usually the way that every single software developer works, as far as I've seen, almost all of them, is that they read the specification, they create a feature branch or something like that, and then they spin up their servers or whatever they're doing, right? And then they start adding functionality, or like they basically start like updating the code so that it does what they does the thing that they're doing, right? And in many cases, by the time that they have because they go into solution mode immediately and start working that way. This is of course what TDD is saying that you should not be doing, but most developers don't like TDD, so they do this anyway. And then they tell themselves that, oh yeah, I'm going to write the tests afterwards. That's what they're going to do. And when they do this, what happens is always the same thing. They will come to a point, usually now, where they feel like they are done. And by the time that they are done, they feel like they understand this problem. It's the easiest code in the world. Why would you need to test it? Or maybe the code was a little bit legacy-ish, hard to test or something like that. Or maybe the deadline came a little bit closer than you wanted it to come, etc., etc. They will come to some conclusion saying that, nah, I don't really need to add tests for this. Or they forget or whatever, right? And so they push that up to a merge request or something like that. And then the next person who does the code review has sort of the same idea, that they read through the code, but they don't really think about the tests, because, as I said, like the the way that the developer thinks about it is usually, I understand this code, therefore I am done. And then they merge it. And it takes a while to get people out of that habit. It is possible. I've done it on many occasions, but it takes a bit of effort, because it's sort of like, as I was saying about the children not brushing their teeth. As a parent, you have to make them. You must build the habit with them so that they do it, so they feel accountable for it. That's not always very easy. Sometimes it's actually very difficult, and it is very difficult because in many cases, especially with the legacy one, if the code is legacy-ish and they can't just add test on top of the code, you have to convince them to refactor the code, and many developers don't want to do that. They don't, because that increases the scope of what they're supposed to be doing. Because in their world, they should never, they never, ever, almost ever think in terms of, this code was written by somebody else who didn't do a good job. Now it's my job to fix that and then add the job that I'm supposed to do on top of the functioning, well-tested code, so that we can continue the quality problem or quality control. They don't really do that. They do what I call shim programming. What they do is that they shim in their feature on top of the stuff that is untested, because, hey, that person didn't do any testing, therefore I don't have to do any testing. And this is the norm, I would say. It never fails. There are only a handful of developers that I know or see that actually by themselves, and I mean especially in front-end. Front-end is the worst culprit there is. That testing is like a joke in front-end, I would say. I would challenge you to find a single interviewing process in front-end where you as a company can hire a single software developer without who based on the fact that they wrote unit tests for whatever code test that they added to your code, or to the process. What I basically mean is that I have done so many code tests, like so many, reviewing for companies and so forth, and the total time a front-end developer has added unit tests to their test, to like the code interview test, is 1 or 2 times, I think, total over the years. Never ever seen it otherwise. Not the same thing for backend developers. And the reason, I think, has more to do with culture than anything else, because the backend developers know, even though I know also that a lot of the backend developers are not always very good at writing unit tests, they know that they're supposed to be doing it. The front-end developers, they never have. It's sort of like children who never were taught that they were supposed to brush their teeth. They sort of know about testing. They sort of know that that's an important thing, but they never had to do it. So why would I? That's the way that people think about it. So what I want you to take away from this is that I completely agree. I think that the majority of engineers don't really like testing. I mean, this is just talking about automated testing, but if you want to see another example of where resistance to this is there, take a look at how long it takes. I tell the entire internet now. If you go and check your delivery pipeline in your, say, Kanban board, or if you're using something like that, I will bet a lot of money on the fact that the time, if we don't think about implementation, the time it takes for a card on your board to go from testing, like ready for testing, and to being tested, manually tested, because I'm assuming that you have some type of manual check or something like that from maybe a fellow developer or something like that. The time it takes for another developer to help you with the manual testing or something similar to that, or the code review or something like that, is usually higher than you would like it to be. And the reason being because, as I said, most developers are focused on the thing that they care about. Because humans, on average, I argue, this is me completely uninformed saying it, but I've never seen it fail. We prioritize that which is critical at all times, regardless of, it doesn't have to be, as long as something is not a direct threat to us, or a very imminent problem, or something that we need to act on fairly immediately. If we don't feel that way, we won't do it. Not by ourselves. And Helping a coworker with a code review or helping them with the testing, they are not as important as picking up the next story, providing value, building something, creating something, because that's the stuff that quote unquote is important. And breaking that cycle can be done. It's not that difficult, but it is definitely something that isn't going to just happen usually. Have a great day.